So we have a great lineup here today, but first, for those that are maybe new to SWAN or new to these types of programming, this is part of our Insights as a Service series. It's where we collaborate and co-curate relevant programming across the smart water sector with our members. In this case today, it's with SWAN member GHD. I encourage you to find out more, and we'll drop links to all of these initiatives later throughout the webinar. But again, this is part of the Insights as a Service series. Next slide, please. One new really relevant research output that we want to share with you all is part of the Energy Efficiency and Decarbonization Community of Practice at SWAN, which released a really great assessment tool called CHART for Carbon Horizon Assessment and Readiness Tool. It's available here. We have a lot of SWAN utility members that were part of this, and we really, really encourage you to use this to also really benchmark your current level of energy maturity and really look at different gaps and improvement areas for you to work on. This is really an industry collaborative tool, so you can use the QR code here, but we'll also, again, drop the relevant links to access this tool on within the chat shortly. Next up, we all love webinars and virtual events, but there's not a lot to compete with an in-person conference experience. SWAN meets globally every year at our flagship conference, and the 2027 edition will be in Porto, Portugal, May 18th through 20th. We really encourage you to come and join really the leading smart water gathering globally. So hope you can join us there, and stay tuned for more announcements regarding the theme and abstracts. Lastly, and this is a segue into the webinar theme today, part of the series is a result of a global smart metering playbook that we released in collaboration with GHD and 80 different organizations around the world, from utilities across different smart metering maturity levels through to metering providers, engineering firms, and ecosystem partners. The entire culmination of the resources is available now. It includes an infographic, survey results, and of course the full write-up. So we really encourage you to start exploring those resources to really help navigate the smart metering journey. And again, thank you to all our partners on this and the Water Research Foundation for publishing this. Next slide, please. Just for the sake of time, we're going to dive right in. I want to introduce and hand the mic over to Alana Maya from Badger Meter, who serves as the Content Marketing Manager for Municipal Water. She's also a former writer and editor, and I like to say that she's turned into now a webinar marketing wizard amongst all of her work and extensive experience in really translating some of those complex topics into engaging narratives for different audiences. Alana, we're thrilled to have you here moderating this session, and I'm going to hand things over to you. Thanks, Alana.
Thanks so much, Shirley. I'm excited to be here and to serve as your moderator today for this very important conversation around AMI implementation and lessons learned from our speakers today. You are not here to see me, so we can move on to the mentee polling. So before I hand this over to our speakers, we want to hear from you, and you can scan this QR code, and there should be a link in the chat if you need. We're just asking 2 brief questions, and then we will get into the discussion with our speakers. So you can start seeing the questions coming in, the responses. It looks like people are planning to implement, exploring the possibility. Nobody's complete yet. Okay, we've got one person saying that they've completed their implementation. That's great. Some advanced in the implementation process. Really, really good. You just give it a couple more seconds, see if anybody else wants to respond, and then we can go to the next question. This is really good. Looks like, you know, a broad range of focus for AMI implementation and where we are in the journey here. So we've got another question. Next question. So what do you see as the biggest barriers to successfully implementing AMI? Some changes here. So technology integration, it's like stakeholder buy-in and technology integration are kind of, they were fighting for top position, but looks like stakeholder buy-in is number one here. I know our speakers have some things to say about that today. And cost also. So I guess it's good to see that workforce change and data privacy concerns are not big ones for this group today. So looking forward to the rest of the conversation here. We can move on to our presentation. So we are going to start the webinar now, and I'm going to kick things off to the partner, Barak Khanna with GHD, and he will talk through some of the content and themes in that smart metering playbook for you. Take it away.
Thanks, Alana. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, depending which part of the world you're joining in today. When we have been talking to the water utilities every time, and some of the questions which we would see coming in from most of them, that for starting the AMI journey, where should they be starting from? Are there any global best practices they can refer to? Are there any use cases they can look into and learn from their mistakes, what other have done, so that they don't repeat the same in their journey? To answer some of these questions, GHD, along with SWAN and funded by the Water Research Foundation, put together the advanced metering infrastructure SWAN metering playbook. And this is a comprehensive document. But again, each water utility has got its own unique challenges. So what we try to do is we have reached out to a number of them. In fact, we reached out to close to 50 plus water utilities across 22 countries to understand what are the challenges they're facing. And some of them have been captured in this report. So this is an interesting report for the utilities who want to start this journey as a good reference. Some of them who are already implementing and they're looking for a mid-course correction again. This book could be a good toolkit to refer to some of the excellent work been done by the engineering companies like GHD, technology companies, meter manufacturers. So this could be a good start point. Next slide, please. So when we were putting together the playbook, the most important thing what we referred to was we need to capture the voice of the water utilities. So we went across, did a survey, took feedback from 55 plus water utilities across 22 countries. This is a 130-page document been put together, starting and giving an overview of the complete smart metering ecosystem, right from different classification of meters, what kind of meters, communication technologies. It touches upon NB-IoT, LoRaWAN, what kind of technologies you got to use that. And the best part of the playbook is it's just not focuses on the technology piece, but on people and processes. So if you are implementing advanced metering infrastructure, basically you're transitioning to a newer process, newer technology system. And this the new system is going to touch upon your people and processes as well. So how do you do the change management? That's been captured as well in this report, which I feel is very important when you're starting on this journey. Then the other thing we talk about is implementation. So when we're doing implementation, again, at some point of time, you might have two metering systems working in a utility, your existing ones and the new system coming in. So how do you do the data transition? How do you manage the legacy systems? How do you integrate? How do you make sure that you don't have islands of technology sitting within the utility? So those are some of the things we've tried to capture in this smart metering playbook, which would be, as I said, great start point if you are planning on EMI implementation. The other thing is we also talked about putting together a business case. So every time you need capital funding, you need to go to council, you need to put together a business case. Then what are the parameters you got to look into? What are the factors you need to look into, which affect or which can make an impact? So there is a section in the playbook which talks about business case, which helps you get started on the numbers. And of course, you can always reach out to some of the engineering consultant company, GHD, who can help you put together the business case as well. So in terms of the key deliverables, when you put in together, it was like, can we have some of the business cases, use cases for the utilities which have done this in the past, which the newer ones can look into, learn from them, and maybe improvise on that as well. So that's what the playbook is all about. Next slide, please. Here's some interesting stats and figures. So the top three drivers, this is the feedback again from the water utilities, why they want to, what is their priority, what is, which will make a significant or a somewhat significant difference if they have to implement AMI. So the top three were the customer focus, that is customer service and engagement. The second one was integrated distribution network management, and last one, revenue recovery, billing, and how they can do cost saving. So these were the top three themes which we looked about. Another interesting fact which came out during the survey was that most of the utilities were concerned about the life of the batteries. And we have seen especially in some of the utilities in Americas who work under very harsh winter conditions, how would a battery last? Because a failing battery means the MDUs won't be communicating the data. And then how do you manage that? So that was one of the concerns. We have not, this is something for the meter manufacturers and technology providers to answer, but this is something what I want to share with this group, which is one of the concerns which came out predominantly in the research. Then the other area we looked upon in the survey was upon the telecom protocols. How do you connect? So 43% of the utilities in North America, they are looking for a fixed AMI network. When we talk about Asia Pacific region, because the cost of cellular is lower over there, 56% of the respondents, they wanted a licensed protocol like NB-IoT, which is narrowband Internet of Things, or LoRaWAN. So those were the preferences. And if we talk about the European market, I think predominantly we're looking for a hybrid system. So these were some of the other findings we saw in the report. Again, as I said earlier, every utility has got unique challenge. This is a broad finding, but again, when you do your feasibility study, you do your current state analysis, you the technology assessment, it will come out more clearly what kind of a network would sustain or would be helpful for your AMI implementation. And again, smart metering, we talked about how do you want to use smart metering, just as a meter to cash kind of approach or an overall digital transformation. So yes, most of the utilities are looking at AMI as a building block to digital transformation. That was very encouraging, but still there's a long way to go about it, and you'll see more details in the report. Next slide, please. Few other interesting things. If you look at the top left graphic where we talked about what would be the size of the utility. So we wanted to make sure that this report is not skewed or is not covering only a particular size of a water utility. So we have covered broadly three ranges we have, which is a smaller ones, less than 100,000 customers, and we have a medium and a large. And the large one was more than 1 million customers, predominantly in Southeast Asia, where you have huge population and that kind of subscriber base. And if you look at the mid graphic, which talks about where they are on the journey, again, interesting fact that the smaller ones are doing better than the bigger ones. So if you look at the smaller ones, 50% plus are already on the journey of implementing rather than the larger ones, obviously because of the size and the capital required, they are slightly lagging behind the smaller ones. That came out in the report. And if you look at it from the risk perspective, I think the top three risks, and this was also one of the indirect questions in the Mentimeter as well, that what is holding them back? Is it the so technology, financial, and I think most of people voted on the Mentimeter for the buy-in. So those were things even we saw in our survey in the report. So again, this is a very interesting piece of a good toolkit to start your AMI journey. And if you have any questions, we are more than happy to answer that today or like even later as well. Feel free to put your questions in the chat, in the Q&A, in the blog, and I think we have a Q&A session in the end. With this, Alana, back to you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Bharat. The playbook is an excellent resource. And, as a water technology leader, Badger Meter was really proud to share a case study. Our global footprint spans across the water cycle. And so our hardware, software, and systems under Blue Edge help our customers move toward a more proactive operation, which is what it sounds like these utilities participating today, and then also in the report are trying to do by using AMI as that kind of launch pad for digital solutions. So really appreciative to SWAN for including us and then for hosting this webinar today. And so now to move into the smart metering implementation details from our speakers. Our first speaker is Daniel Lazaro. He's the AMI Program Director at Miami-Dade County Water and Sewer Department. And I will turn it over to Daniel.
Thanks, Alana, for the intro. Again, my name is Daniel Izarazo. I'm the AMI Program Director for Miami-Dade County Water and Sewer. I'm happy to be with all of you here today. I'm looking forward to the discussion. Just to kind of set the stage for those of you who may not be familiar with Miami-Dade County infrastructure, this slide represents an overview of that. Essentially, we have within Miami-Dade County roughly a population of around 2.8 million residents that we currently provide water and sewer services for. On the water production side, we have 3 regional water treatment plants and 5 satellite water treatment plants that are scattered throughout the extremities of the county to help maintain adequate pressure in the system. And we roughly produce around 300 million gallons per day. To aid with that production of water, our system has about 96 production wells and well over 6,000 miles of water transmission and distribution lines. So the metering part of this is towards the end of the life cycle of our water infrastructure. So you can go to the next slide. And our current meter environment is essentially what today we have roughly 470,000 metered accounts that are read manually. On a daily basis, that's roughly 99% of the total amount of meters that we have. Within the organization, we have about 35 meter readers that we bill on a quarterly basis for the most part, and we still use those handheld devices that every meter goes up to the property, reads the numbers manually and inputs it into a handheld device. So that's kind of like how we currently do our meter reads. Interestingly enough, we have experimented in the past with AMI technology. We did roughly about 10 years ago do a technology pilot with the census meters that we currently have installed localized within a municipality within Miami-Dade County, where we've tested and have become familiar with the software and that aspect of it. And now we're looking to take our AMI journey to the next step. And as far as the account mix, that meter population is roughly about 89% residential, with 9.5% being commercial and industrial, and the remaining 1.5% being irrigation. Next slide. So a little bit more details about our AMI contract more specifically, so you can understand the scale and structure of it. The scope of work of our AMI contract represents the replacement of about 500,000 meters. It is a 6-year deployment implementation phase of these AMI meters. The contract itself is roughly 20 years contract term, with those first 6 years being that implementation phase. And this program is a priority for our department. It represents the single largest contract in history, in our organizational history. So that's no small feat. That's how much priority we've given to the AMI rollout within Miami-Dade County. And I've heard when this project first started, I kind of heard this before, and I'll stick to this story because it sounds good. But essentially, what I understood of it before we started was that this was the largest AMI deployment in the United States, which has a nice ring to it. So it's my story and I'm sticking to it, sort of deal. Maybe some on the call can correct me if I'm wrong there. I know there are a few other utilities kind of equal in size that are also starting their AMI journey, but I think we were first out of the gate when it came to that. So it is a $273 million contract. Our prime contractor is Core and Main, with AECOM as a program manager. And it's essentially being done under a network as a service model. As far as equipment that's scoped to be installed, for the majority of the installs, we are installing the Sensus iPearl magnet meters, and that's going to be paired with the fixed FlexNet network that's associated with that. And we also have some software packages included in our scope, being with the Vertex One customer portal and some other enhancements that we're currently evaluating with Xylem View and a few other analytics that we may be looking to get out of our AMI rollout. On the bottom right-hand side just represents the deployment timeline, those first 6 years that we're going to be working on various things, with the first year being likely the most difficult and intense year in standing up the system, getting the network infrastructure in place, and then starting with an initial pilot to confirm everything is working as it should. And then essentially years 2 through 5 is, fingers crossed, on cruise control, right? Where we're working on just, mass deployment installs. We're confident in how the system is integrated and set up, and it's just hopefully becomes monotonous after that. And then that 6th year is our final acceptance and closeout phase. Next slide. So here's how we've laid out that the deployment journey that we're currently on. Includes, a few key areas such as, planning, system deployment, integration, pilot and initial testing, the mass deployment that we were talking about, the construction closeout, and then ultimately the long-term transition to operations. Where we are currently is right around steps 2 and 3. We've already completed our planning phase and initial kickoff. The NTP for our AMI program was in March of this year, March 2026. So we've gotten over a few initial hurdles in our planning stages, and we're currently in the system deployment integration phase, where we're kind of on a parallel path here on identifying the sites for network installation, and also working through some of the more specific design elements for some of our integrations that we're going to need as part of the AMI rollout. So that covers the steps of our journey and where we're at. And from there, I'll kick it over back to you, Alana.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Now we'll move on to our next speaker. You can do next slide. So our next speaker is Damon Boutwell. He is with Pace Water System. He's the general manager there. Thank you, Damon, for being here, and I'll turn it over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Appreciate the opportunity to be with y'all. We're a little further along the way. We're one of the ones that did complete our AMI transformation. Again, we're in Northwest Florida. Next slide, please. We're a small to medium rural water system established in 1964. Operate 12 wells, 8 elevated water storage tank, a little over 21,000 active water meters, serving 56,000 residents. Split wise, we're roughly 5% commercial, 95% residential. We have an annual operating budget of about $20 million, and then a capital budget of about $28 million just for infrastructure improvements. Next slide, please. I didn't put this bullet on there, but we swapped from a manual read to a touch read back in the early 90s. We used touch read then for basically a couple decades probably. Then In 2013, we began change outs from touch read to an AMR, a drive-by type system. After changing out roughly half of our system in 2015, we decided to go ahead and convert from an AMR to an AMI, fixed base network. We've done this. We have collectors on water towers. We have collectors or repeaters on lift stations, even some on street signs, DC repeaters. In 2017, then we transitioned to Mueller's AMI system using positive displacement meters for our residential customers. We have a lot of older employees that like the older school positive displacement meters. We do use a multitude of others, and I'll get to that in a minute. Actually, we've been running that for almost 10 years now, and we're also now beginning a pilot program with Neptune Technology Group, looking at their AMI system as well. Next slide, please. Part of the reasons in the changes where we've done hardware changes, again, old school way, we use mechanical meters, basically from the standpoint of positive displacement meters. We're commercial wise, we've been using mag meters now, and quite a few. We're demoing some ultrasonics, as on both commercial as well as residential. Technological changes as well is another reason to look at changing. We've been running a fixed base network now for years. Florida's the lightning capital of the world. I've got one collector down right now due to a thunderstorm last week. We're looking at converting to a cellular-based system simply because of the maintenance of the network itself. We had one elevated water tower that got hit by lightning 3 times in 6 months. We wound up relocating that collector to another water tower simply because of that. Just the cost of the maintenance of the network itself, when you keep having to deal with those types of thunderstorms. Again, I mentioned mechanical versus solid state. We're trying out some ultrasonic residential meters as well. Again, we have mag meters as well as positive displacement throughout our system. One thing that we found, and we're not really expecting with a conversion to an AMI system, yes, everybody thinks right off the bat you're going to save manpower, and you will in meter reading. However, prepare to staff up your customer service. That's something we didn't really expect, but quickly realized was really the key thing after a conversion to an AMI system. Prior to having an AMI system, if you have a manual system or even a drive-by system, a customer calls in with a question or a complaint about a bill, you literally have 2 data points to discuss with them. You have a reading last month, you have a reading this month. Everything else is conjecture. You don't know what happened in the meantime. However, with an AMI system, with ours, we have hourly reads. So again, we have hourly data points for the last 30, 60, 90, however long days that they want to look at. So the conversation between customer service and the member is a lot more detailed conversation. You can let them know that leak started, at 3 p.m. last Sunday, if that's the case. Again, you can let them know what time of day, the water usage is occurring. If a leak is fixed, you can let them know when it's fixed. A lot of times when they're concerned about the amount of water that the meter's reading, when you can pinpoint the date and time that they fixed the leak and they know that, it really resounds to them that, hey, it is accurate. So again, that was one of the lessons we learned that was no one told us about up front. So that's one of the key things, takeaway that we want to share with everyone. Other thing important is the public outreach. Next slide, please. One thing that we did when we first initially done this, we were using a contractor for doing the meter change outs. We had business cards printed with both our name, contact information, as well as the contractor we were using at the time, name, address, contact information, as well as door hangers with both of our contacts and names on it. We were overseeing it, but yet contract to their personnel in the field. We even went so far, and I did not think about that at the time, but we even had magnetic signs for their vehicles that had both, our name and them listed as a contractor on their vehicles, so that as people saw those vehicles, stopping in the edge of their yard, they knew who they were, knew what the situation was. So public outreach and education of the public is something that you need to consider and be prepared for. And that's all I had there. Back to you, Alana.
That's great. Thank you so much to both of our speakers, Daniel and Damon. So it's really great to hear from utilities that are actually doing this work, and both of you had some really great insights there about implementation. So you can still add a question in the Q&A tab here in the chat if you have one. I see one in there right now, so we'll just kick that right off. This is for Bharat. Did the survey consider utilities that were implementing metering for the first time, as well as those that were transitioning from manual metering over to an AMI system?
Yes, it included the utilities who were just starting this journey, and it was quite helpful for them when the final report was shared with them. It really helped them. So the answer is yes.
And then since we're talking about the playbook, it makes it very clear when you read the playbook that there are utilities that sit at very different stages of their maturity when it comes to AMI, with two great examples of that on this panel today. From the research and the information that was compiled from these worldwide organizations, what do you think is the biggest misconception that utilities still have about where they should be on this journey?
What really came out, the biggest misconception is many times utilities see this as a meter to cash project, and this is done in isolation. As we have seen that AMI is a building block to digital transformation, and we need to involve more departments so that you can get the biggest ROI, the return on investment, and the benefit of implementing this technology. It is getting it better, but still that's a misconception that the meter department goes and implement this in isolation. And what you end up doing is you're creating another technology island. You already have a lot of other systems sitting in the utility, and you add one more to that. So I think integration and consulting the other departments is important as well.
I love that. That technology island is a really good visual there. What about, one of the findings too in the playbook is that the success of an AMI project isn't really about that installation. It's about that data integration and what comes next. So I guess really avoiding that island of data. So, I'd like to hear from maybe each of the speakers today. So we can start with Bharat and then move into Damon and Daniel. Of what success really looks like in your view, maybe 2 or 3 years post deployment, and maybe even beyond that, if you have a thought in that way. So maybe Bharat, we can start with you.
Sorry, Lara, I really missed that question.
What does the global research says that the success of an AI project isn't really about the installation. It's about what, the data integration and what the utility does with that data, what comes next, right? So, do you have a view of what success looks like maybe 2 or 3 years post an AMI deployment?
Yeah, definitely. So what we've seen is the ones who've done it successfully, and 2 of them are there on the panel as well. This brings in better, I'll put it in 2 compartments. One is external and internal. So externally, you have a better interaction and customer management and customer service. Internally, you're bringing in process efficiency. So as I said earlier, implementing AMI is just not smarter meters or better meters. It's also about how you are doing things day to day and the operations and people and processes. So that brings in efficiencies, it brings in cost savings, and that has been seen by various utilities who have implemented that. And we have two of them on the panel as well.
What about Damon? What does success look like for you at Pace?
I'd say two of the things that we looked at, and again, this was our case. It may not have been with everyone, but especially with mechanical meters, you have to realize they have a finite physical life. The older meters are not going to record that lower flow. So so that's one thing that you've got to keep in mind. And with the change out of meters, even if you stay mechanical, versus going ultrasonic or mag meters, you're looking at a better recording of your water usage. Therefore, eventually you're looking at a higher water loss efficiency. You want to see that unaccounted for water dropping. That in itself was a great thing. One thing that I did not mention that's really kind of a successful aspect as well, and I don't want to put plugs in on names, but there are certain companies that do billing audits per se, that will actually audit your billing system. What they're looking for is on a usage standpoint, if you've got a typical residential type user, or that's not a good example, for certain types of businesses, use that for instance. Again, you've got 3 businesses of the same type, 2 of them use, 400 gallons a day, and one only uses 200 gallons a day. What's the difference in that? They're going to go out and investigate it. They can actually do field investigation, things of that nature. One thing that we actually did, we contracted and actually had that audit done actually 3 total times. One before we ever started doing a meter change out for our conversion to AMI. Then they came back in after we had completely converted to an AMI system, done another audit, because you can have an issue, especially on your larger meters from a programming standpoint on the meter. If it's not programmed properly, you can have some billing discrepancies there. Your usage is not being picked up accurately. Therefore, your billing is not accurate. So again, we done that, and our final time was when we actually done a billing software conversion, had them come in after that fact. But again, from our standpoint also, the success is, less unaccounted for water, and to ensure you're accurately metering and billing your members or customers for what they're actually using. So I should have threw that in a lesson learned, but that's something I did want to throw out there. I would encourage anyone that's doing a change out program to contract and utilize one of these companies that do that type of work. I wouldn't wait until afterwards. Get your baseline set now before you start your meter change out program. That's all.
Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you so much. Daniel, what do you think about what success will look like post-deployment?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I mean, right now, since we're early in our AMI journey, a lot of our success metrics are still more forward looking versus in the past, like Damon. So it's good to hear his perspective now that he's on the other side. And I think Brad kind of hit the nail on the head there, where the success metrics that at least I'm tracking and trying to execute are like in 2 buckets: external and internal. With the external being, in our case, what's in the contract is to replace 500,000 meters. That's very easy thing to achieve in the sense that, like, if that's one of the contract requirements, replace 500,000. Did we replace 500,000 in 6 years, like how we wanted to? That's an easy check, yes. And the customer facing part of this is also like another key aspect that we got to get right when we get to the the initial pilot and mass deployment more specifically. Damon, I was glad to see that Damon mentioned the customer interaction in his part of the presentation as being key, and I 1,000% agree. In some of the meetings I've had with the internal team, when we can do all the integrations right, we can do the installations flawlessly, we can do everything else right until we're blue in the face. But if the customer interaction interface of this, if we get that wrong, we're essentially dead in the water. because a lot of what drives what we do are the customers, right? If the customer is not happy, they're the client. If there's problems, that doesn't bode well to a successful program either. So those are the external ones, and as far as the internal ones, monitoring, the network, how it operates, making sure that everything is communicating as it should. Billing is another huge success metric, that those integrations with meters and billing and how that information gets to the customer is so essential to get right. That's why integration up front is one of the key things that is you got to monitor and get right, because if you don't trust the data, then a lot of what we're doing kind of falls on deaf ears. But again, more internal success metrics is being ready organizationally, making sure that our team internally have been trained, they know how to operate the system. For many of the organization, AMI is still generally new, even though we've had a very long running pilot. But that was kind of like how Bharat and Damon mentioned about being in those technology silos, where that was a small pilot that our meter operations team led, but again, on a smaller scale, not much of an impact within the organization. But this AMI rollout that we're currently underway is going to take that to the next step.
No, that's really great. So we talked about what success will look like at the end of the project. Let's back up and for Damon and Daniel, what parameters did your utilities consider when you were choosing the hardware for AMI? And then maybe we can dive into a little bit more of how the SWAN playbook may cover that part for guiding utilities on making those decisions. But maybe start with you, Daniel, this time of what were the I guess the problems you were looking to solve here by moving to an AMI system, and what were the questions that you asked?
Yeah, so unfortunately I wasn't part of the AMI program in its initial stages of when we went through setting up a proposal and what requirements to attach to that. But essentially the core goal was to see how the department can become more efficient in how we do meter reads. Obviously the AMI does that 10 times over. So really getting the department up to speed. As I mentioned in my intro, we still do 99% of our meter reads, the old-fashioned way with meter readers that they input visual data into handheld devices. We do have a little bit of the AMR where we're just driving by as well. Again, small population, and again, just another small population of AMI meters that we've tested before. But on a more global scale, we want to bring the department into the next generation of using leveraging this technology for the better, right? The amount of things that you can do with leveraging the data, I think is key.
For us, I guess one of the first things, we went and visited different sites, looked at both different manufacturers' meters. We'd used manufacturers' meters in the past, different ones, but at the same time, again, look at their meters themselves, as well as look at whether it's an AMI or an AMI platform that you're looking at. You look at the user interface of that. Again, was it designed by a coder sitting in a back room that doesn't know how utility operates? Or did it have some input into it from actual utility people from a ease of use, ease of navigation standpoint? Again, you kind of look at a lot of that, because realistically, a mechanical meter is a mechanical meter. They're all going to operate the same. They're all going to work basically the same. So from that standpoint, and realistically, most of your warranties are the same on them now. The basic is the customer service that you get out of that manufacturer and or vendor that you're using, but then your day-to-day, it's that interface you're using. That's what makes a lot of the difference. Again, you are going to have someone dedicated to actually monitoring that network. And again, those systems have changed now. It can actually be done as a service as well now, so that the utility itself is not really the one maintaining it. But that was one of our other considerations over a decade ago when we started swapping to AMI. Basically, cell coverage was not that great in some of our area. So, it really wasn't much of an option. You didn't have a carrier that you could use, and you had decent coverage across the area. So going with a fixed base network made sense to us. However, again, due to the maintenance, like I mentioned, lightning strikes, things of that nature, it's just added work for your staff to have to maintain the actual infrastructure. Therefore, again, we are looking at swapping to cellular now. I mean, pretty much you've got great coverage everywhere, and the technology of the meters or their nodes, however they're operating now, I mean, they're up to the hunting game counters we have now. I mean, it'll automatically swap to whatever the strongest network is to send in your pictures. Well, meters work the same way now. They've caught up to that process. And so again, one network's down, doesn't really matter. I'm going to be getting my readings through another network. And again, when we first swapped to it, that did not exist. So again, the technology has changed, kind of lends to, our desired change now to move away from the fixed base to a cellular network. So again, that was, part of what we were looking at and all really at that point in time.
No, that's excellent. I think it's a good point to call that out too, with how the technology has evolved and changed over time. So let's see. I do have another question here. What was the governance buy-in process for both of you, Damon and Daniel, when considering moving toward AMI? I know, you both touched on a few things, but who were the stakeholders that you needed to get on board for this transition?
It's two different teams there. Really, from the stakeholder standpoint, you really need both your water department as well as your customer service department, on board from the stakeholder standpoint to ensure the proper implementation of it, the changeover, the work that's required in doing that. From the governance standpoint, though, I mean, after researching various systems, we actually brought in, what our choice was and had the presentation actually made by the vendor to the board itself. Again, it's their final approval in going that route. They've got to approve me to sign the check on it. So at the same time, you want them to be introduced to it. One additional thing that I think is important, and I'm in that buy-in, and I remember this, just one of the things I remember at the point in time that you don't see it as much anymore, but 10 years ago plus you did. People were scared of the smart metering, smart tools, Internet of Things. Again, they were concerned about that. That's one thing that your governance board needs to be clear on and set a policy of initially. People have asked us over the years, what's our opt-out policy? Easy. You don't get water. We're not going to go out there and manually read your meter and even charge you a higher fee for it, as opposed to getting your reading like we get everybody else's. That in itself is something that needs to be set and understood as a policy up front. If you're going to have some type of an opt-out policy, great. Make sure everyone understands it. If your policy is all in, again, make sure everyone understands it. You don't want to have that argument or any of those types of things, once you're actually into the implementation phase. So, make sure your roadmap from that standpoint is clear.
Yeah, and just to add what Damon mentioned, I think from a governance standpoint, I think I'll speak to more of that internal engagement. Within Miami-Dade Water and Sewer Department, we've been trying to roll out AMI on a commercial scale probably for over 20 years. The AMI, the technology itself has been around. It's kind of changed over time, but I think there was always an interest on the department's perspective to take that step into, getting that data in a more efficient way through AMI or whatever other means we were contemplating at the time. And we finally have kind of reached the point where we've agreed on the technology, and we've, started to roll out the AMI program itself. But one of the initial hurdles that I had was, internal stakeholder buy-in, where there was, as you can imagine, Miami-Dade County is an organization of like over 3,000 employees, and AMI is really a specific subset of divisions that, between meter operations, maybe the billing folks, and a few others know about. So even today, that's, even with our current AMI pilot that we've initiated before, only a small subset of people know about that. But with the larger AMI rollout, one of the first hurdles I had was getting that buy-in from the internal teams about, bringing them up to speed on, what AMI is going to do, what the contract says. That's my role in what I do within the organization. But then again, having them understand how decisions flow, that governance structure internally, about like how do things get approved when it's 5 different divisions that need to, provide input on. So setting up that initial governance structure internally was a major step that we did in the beginning, to try and get that organizational readiness in a rhythm where the department as a whole would be on the same page versus just me making decisions in a silo because I'm the director of the project. So I made it a point for the program not to roll out that way, and that, these decisions get made as a department, and I'm just the tip of the spear.
It's excellent. One more question from the audience here, about battery life. So maybe from the playbook, how the playbook covers any battery life concerns for these devices, and then maybe from both of our utility contacts, how a battery life may have played into your decision-making process.
So there's a whole chapter on the smart metering ecosystem, which covers the type of smart meters, that covers about the telecom technologies, which covers about the software, meter data management systems and the integration. So this whole chapter, and it includes the battery life as well of those meters and the MTUs. These all inputs, as I said earlier, the report has been prepared in cooperation from meter manufacturers like Badgers and others, who have some of the best meters and the technology to offer. So this is contribution from meter manufacturers. This is contribution from the users, the utilities, what they have seen, how the battery, what the technology providers have been claiming, and what was actually the life of the battery. So we have shown all those information. The answer is this comprehensive. But again, as I said earlier, that every utility has got a unique challenge. So this playbook is a good start point. Technology is evolving pretty fast. So we need to consult what's latest in the market available now. That's equally important. But we have covered the battery and the meters as well in the playbook.
Yeah, I guess I'll add to that, and I'll be brief. But I wasn't around in the beginning of the proposal phases, so I'm not sure of some of the, more of these technical decisions were made beforehand. But if I were speaking with my operations hat on, regarding battery, I think, the playbook actually covered it very well, in that it is in the decision-making process, like how, long something lasts. The longer it lasts, the less you have to touch it, the better from an operational perspective. So I would assert that was definitely something that was part of the decision-making process, and most likely we were interested in products that had long battery lives so that we wouldn't have to touch it frequently.
Yeah, and again, be prepared, no matter what you're doing with this, you're going to wind up with some issues at some point in time. We had the meters we were putting in 2017 and 18. The battery manufacturer had a bad batch of batteries during that time frame. So again, we had a large number of meters that we've been having to change out. The manufacturer warranted them, no problem on that. However, that's still a lot of workload. So again, it is an issue. You're always going to have, there's going to be some problem that's going to occur that you're not expecting. Again, you've got to, be able to roll with that. But yeah, we're still, again, overcoming that. So we've had them in roughly 9 years right now. And again, we're, already having to replace some of those that were 6 to 8 years old just because of, just a bad batch of batteries. Others, we put in a year earlier that, not a problem with. It's, again, just that window we've had issues with.
To bring it back to the playbook just for a little bit, Bharat, can you talk a little bit about what surprised you the most in terms of the communication protocol preferences? Looking at this as a global report across regions and business models when you think about the playbook.
So we have tried to cover it from a generic perspective so that it meets all. But again, this is a good start point where we've taken feedback from 50 plus utilities. The contribution is from meter manufacturers as well, and the other parts of the ecosystem. So this is a good start point. But again, if a utility is looking at starting their AMI journey, then it would be nice to get a feasibility study done to understand what is their current state, what is the technology landscape, and the feasibility study can also cover about the roadmap. You don't change your water meters every year. So this is a long-term commitment. The meter life today is minimum 10 years. The better ones, the manufacturers claims even 15 years. So you're committing to a system for next 10 to 15 years. So you got to take a decision considering how the technology is evolving. And the other thing what we are seeing is a lot of focus on the meter itself. So meters is a part of AMI. It's not everything. There are things beyond that. We miss out the softer KPIs. And when you're implementing whether 100,000 meters or like Miami did almost 500,000 water meters, this is a good 5 to 6 year project. So be ready for a mid-course correction as well. In spite, no matter how much planning you do, and as Devin and Daniel mentioned that for a program at this scale, there would be something will go off the track. You've done a lot of planning, but you find, oh my God, this is not the way what I thought about. So be ready for a mid-course correction. So those are some of the softer KPIs you got to prepare yourself as well.
Thank you so much. And we're getting close to time. So just for last one, quick fire, rapid fire style for each of the panelists, if you had to distill down either the playbook experience or your deployment experience into one piece of advice for a utility leader looking to start their AMI journey, what would it be? And I will start with Daniel.
So I would say that the meters are probably the easy part. It's really the system and the people around it that you really need to focus on, focus your effort on. Because again, yeah, one of the, I think you asked a question earlier about what are the biggest misconceptions, and one for me that I learned quickly was that this is more than just a hardware project. You're swapping meters, it is not the extent of what AMI is. That's essentially the easy part. So again, I would focus on not so much the technology or the meters themselves, but more on the people and the systems that are built around it. Focus your energy there, and I think you'll be okay.
My quick comment on it would be, as far as who you have that's going to kind of oversee your actual data aspect of it, your AMI division itself. You've got to have someone that is going to take ownership of it. That's really the key thing. That's got to be their system. You've got to give them pretty much the control to run that. They've got to take full ownership of it to keep it maintained, keep it up.
For me, it would be start with the feasibility study, involve all stakeholders right from beginning, and as I said earlier, be ready for a bit course correction as well.
Excellent. Thank you all for sharing, and I'll have Shirley come back in for a final word.
Yes, I know it's time. So first of all, I just want to thank everyone for participating and really rolling with us until the end. It was clearly insightful. I want to thank Alana for moderating, Damon, Daniel for sharing your implementation journeys. And again, very different stages, but some really great nuggets of wisdom here. And of course, Barad and Team GHD for partnering on not only this webinar, but that kind of full playbook and the resources that are out there live, from the infographic to the case studies. As mentioned, this will be recorded in case you missed anything or you want to revisit. There's also some more questions trickling in. I want to say good morning because we've had questions throughout the entire time. We will do our best to get answers to you and then kind of consolidate them all. I really appreciate the questions. There's new ones coming in on cybersecurity, really fantastic ones that we will try to get back to you. So again, thanks everyone, and stay tuned for the recording as well. Really appreciate your time. All the best.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.